For centuries, Ibn al-Haytham's monumental scientific discoveries went largely unnoticed by history. Unfortunately, Western scientists like Copernicus and Galileo received the majority of credit while relying heavily on the works of Islamic scholars such as al-Haytham, whose work was published hundreds of years beforehand. Researchers are just now beginning to understand and report on the instrumental work of these Islamic scholars. While ancient Islamic scientist Ibn al-Haytham's name may not be as well known as that of Copernicus or Isaac Newton, we certainly benefit from his discoveries every day. From the invention of the camera obscura, which changed our understanding of vision as well as art and led to the creation of movies, to the development of the scientific method, Ibn al-Haytham had a massive influence on science over the course of his life, including revolutionary work in the science of vision. Before Ibn al-Haytham, scientists thought that either vision worked through light rays that came from the eye, known as the emission theory, or that forms entered the eyes from an object, known as the intromission theory. Ibn al-Haytham discovered that the truth lay somewhat in between the two of these theories. Vision is actually made possible by rays of light entering the eye and stimulating the optic nerve. He wrote the Book of Optics, which revolutionized science in that area. So, how did this scientist make such important discoveries? Well, Ibn al-Haytham was born in 965 AD in Basra, which is now Iraq. At the time, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad was a thriving center of knowledge and study in Iraq. Ibn al-Haytham was well positioned to pursue a life of study and scholarship. It is a Muslim belief that seeking truth brings one closer to God, and this motivated many Islamic scholars, including al-Haytham, in their discoveries in fields such as mathematics, science, theology, astronomy, and more.
In his early life, Ibn al-Haytham was a devout scholar of Muslim texts. At first, his academic focus was theology, a subject he thought would be able to get him closest to the truth, and therefore closer to God. One of his motivations was to reconcile the differences between the Sunni and Shia sects. However, he was unable to find truth and eventually determined that the differences between the two were mostly based on the personal background of each group's members. Frustrated that this quest for truth had hit a dead end, determined to focus upon things that could be proved rationally, and inspired by the objective observation used by Aristotle, Ibn al-Haytham made his way to the House of Wisdom to study mathematics, science, physics, and logic. After studying the works of Aristotle, he read those of Euclid and eventually Ptolemy, whose Almagest he planned to make a thorough commentary on. However, just as he was beginning to become the scholar that he so wanted to be, Ibn al-Haytham was appointed to a government position in Basra. It is unclear what the position entailed, though some speculate that he was a civil engineer. Whatever the position, Ibn al-Haytham would have had to accept it. Failing to do so would disrespect the government, not to mention forego financial and social security for himself and his family. However, the job also took time away from al-Haytham's work. Eventually, al-Haytham was removed from his post due to insanity. Some historians believe that he faked the madness to return to his studies, while others see it as a genuine struggle with illness. His return to his studies did not last for long, though, as in year 1010, al-Hakim, the Caliph of Egypt, known as the Mad Caliph, sent a servant to bring Ibn al-Haytham to build a dam on the Nile. Having no ability to refuse such a powerful man, Ibn al-Haytham traveled to Egypt to meet with the Caliph. Once in Egypt, Ibn al-Haytham created and presented his plan, but he was ultimately unable to carry it out, either due to the expenses or logistics. Angered by this, al-Hakim sentenced him to be imprisoned.
However, imprisonment was not the end of Ibn al-Haytham's studies. While imprisoned, he experimented with light and vision and eventually invented the camera obscura. Camera comes from the Latin word for room, while obscura means darkened. Ibn al-Haytham's camera obscura was very close to this definition, as it was a darkened room with a hole that allows light to enter and project an upside-down mirror image of whatever was outside the room. With this device, al-Haytham was able to understand how light rays travel separately to form images. He was also able to deduce that our visual abilities are activated by the brain, as light enters our eyes to stimulate the processes that allow us to see. This invention was described in his Book of Optics, which was also written while he was imprisoned. Ibn al-Haytham's theory of light and vision was nothing like previous theories from Greek or Islamic scholars, and was the first theory of vision to place emphasis on the lens and its ability to produce a magnified image. His 7-volume treatise he wrote while being incarcerated, Kitab al-Manazir, or Book of Optics, goes into depth in discussing theories of light reflection, refraction, and dispersion, forming the basis for the invention of spectacles, microscopes, and telescopes. He also attempted to explain binocular vision. The development of this invention and the discoveries about optics that it led to was important not only in the field of physics, but also in all sciences. However, these discoveries were not the most important advancement Ibn al-Haytham made for science. It was his systematic approach to studying and testing hypotheses that revolutionized the field, providing instructions for experimenters to collect empirical evidence for their questions, rather than relying on human perception alone. His pioneering of the modern scientific method allowed science to flourish all over the world, and allowed the experiments of the most well-known scientists after him to flourish. For that reason, figures like Galileo, Copernicus, Isaac Newton, and Johannes Kepler are all in Ibn al-Haytham's debt.